We did the defenseman last week, centers today. Next week, we're going to do, I believe, left wing or right wing. I have the schedule somewhere, and then we'll finish up with goalies. But yeah, today is the center's turn here. And first up is going to be Connor McDavid. And similar to what we discussed with Cale Makar last week, obviously he's going to be in the top tier here. But, is he in a tier by himself, or is Draisaitl in there with him? Is McKinnon in there with him? Where do we see that? How do we handicap this out of the bat?
I think he's in a tier of his own. I get it that Draisaitl and McKinnon are, right there. But, when you're talking about the number one overall, draft pick, generational player, it's McDavid. I think he's on a tier by himself, to be honest. Just a step above.
I would have an argument for putting McKinnon there. From a fantasy perspective, McKinnon can rack up goals. He's at 100-point pace every year. He drives on the power play. He is also a massive shot volume player, which is, I don't think that's what McDavid is. McDavid is a full, complete player, and McKinnon is as well. We're picking between the creme de la creme here. So it's nitpicking for it. But in terms of fantasy and in terms of what these two players can bring, if your consolation prize is Nathan McKinnon, I don't think that gap is as wide as it used to be, right? I don't think Connor McDavid is a 150-point player in the NHL, which is saying something because he can, he can flirt with that any time of the year. But I mean, he's right there for McKinnon, and it's hard to also discredit Draisaitl just because, he led the league in goals, right? So, but I see Draisaitl more as a winger. I get he plays center, but that's because I don't think the Oilers have enough center depth. So yes, they play them separately, but when push comes to shove and they need offense, those two are on the ice at every given moment together.
Now, this would be a healthy time to remind people we are tier ranking from a fantasy perspective and not actual hockey ability. Because yes, if we're just talking about hockey ability, then yes, Connor McDavid belongs in a tier by himself. And that's not a knock on Draisaitl or McKinnon. We are just talking from a fantasy perspective. So, before you start typing in that, comment, if you're watching later, again, now what I will say, to make the argument that others belong in that tier, is Connor McDavid is not a goal scorer. He is going to lead the league in points. He's going to get the Art Ross trophy more likely. 26 goals last year, 32 before that, 64, okay, fine, and then 44 before that. But even then, low 30s, had low 40s. So, to me, that's an area where you can put Draisaitl and McKinnon in that group because their goals, the scoring is a little more balanced among the points. Now, you mentioned you would put McKinnon in that tier. I didn't hear you say Draisaitl, Chris. So why no Draisaitl?
I can live with Draisaitl being there as well. I just there are lots of benefits to having Leon Draisaitl. He is a great second option. He is tied to McDavid's hip basically, and he does have the dual position eligibility, right? McDavid will not give you that. He is a pure center, whereas Draisaitl will give you center, and usually you'll get winger eligibility with him. So I would definitely put him there, but I would rank it McDavid, McKinnon, and then Draisaitl would finish off the S tier. Because again, the shot volume from Draisaitl is not there. Right, to be in the S tier, there are so many things you got to do at just a super high level. And I'm not going to argue against McDavid because that would be nuts.
Correct.
But if I'm looking at Nathan McKinnon, there are so many things that he can score. He can rack up assists. He does it on the power play. The shot volume is high. The ice time is elevated. There's so many things that he does well that he deserves to be there from a fantasy perspective.
So the argument I'm going to make for it is in pretty much every mock draft I've done, and believe me, I've been up at night doing them till I fall asleep with the phone in my hand. And I wake up and oh, that's who I ended up taking because I started a 14-teamer at midnight Pacific. The top three in every draft is always McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon. There may be, McKinnon may go second. Maybe somebody takes Draisaitl first or whatever. But those are your top three. So I think I'm okay with S tier being all those three. And that is your S tier. And by the way, some of these guys are going to show up. They're also wings with Yahoo eligibility. So you're going to see Leon Draisaitl again. Brady Kachuk, we're going to see again. So like, keep in mind that these are guys we're going to see again at various positions. So we've established the S tier. We're not putting Matthews in that tier, but obviously he leads off the A tier, correct?
That's perfectly fine. He has the capability to be the highest goal scorer in the NHL. I don't know how healthy he's been the last couple of years. That wrist injury may have lingered a little longer than he would have liked. He does a lot of other things well, right? He does kill penalties. The shot volume is elevated as well. So there's a lot of good things. I guess what I'm worried about with Matthews is how the loss of Marner is going to affect him, because Marner was an elite setup man, and say what you want about him, and people certainly have. I mean, listen, every goal scorer needs somebody to set him up, and we're going to see how the Leafs are going to do that for him. But I guess I'm a little bit worried as to how many points he's going to rack up, but he's still going to be an elite option. He's still probably a top 10 pick in fantasy. He's going to play the important minutes, and it's kind of like figure it out afterwards, right? That's kind of what it is.
Matthews for sure still a first round pick in fantasy, probably in that 8 to 10 range. You don't really see him fall past you really don't see him fall into double digits. Maybe, I don't really recall seeing him go later than like 11 or anything like that. So yes, still very much a first. And yeah, again, because he's losing a guy like Marner, Michelli or Nyes has to prove that they can feed him and continue to have him be the guy that drives that line. 33 goals last year, of course, 69 the year before that, 40, 60, 41. So yeah, he's still top 10 pick, still very much A tier there. So I think the next few guys that we throw in there, I don't think we'll get any arguments with. To me, it's going to be where we end the A tier and do the B tier. That to me is where you're going to have a problem. So, Kachuk's been going right behind Matthews in most of these drafts. So far, we're still fine. Eichel, same thing. He's been going in that 14 to 17 range, we'll say, for ADP. So again, no problems here. And that's the thing, and this is one of the things we talk about with fantasy hockey is there are so many centers. So like, yes, like you shouldn't pass up on certain guys, but for the most part, if you can wait, I mean, we're not even like deep into the second round yet, and there's already 6 centers that are on the board that are, either S tier or A tier. So
with where does that point come? Where are you like, okay, I'll wait? Is it after Austin Matthews? After, like, where are you like, you know what? I'll go in a different direction if someone of the better tier is on that, in that ranking.
I think that answer is going to be determined where we would determine where the A tier ends, because at that point, to me, like if you could still get an A tier center, if it's your second round pick, sure, because that's the other thing too. If you didn't take a center in the first round, then yeah, you can come back around and take a set. But sometimes people go double center, and if that one of those centers doesn't have a wing eligibility that you can slide them to, that's where it's like, do I really want my first 2 picks to be centers, especially if you're towards an end of a round or I should say center only, where, okay, it's going to be 20 something picks before that gets back to me. So that's why, I take one early for sure. And then you see how it falls to you. So we're okay here. We're not going to overanalyze things and be like, why Kachuk belongs there and Eichel. It's common sense when we're doing this right now. It's where the borders, it's where we draw the divide. William Nylander, are we still putting him A tier?
I guess if we consider him a centerman, then
according to Yahoo, he is. He's a right man in real life, but
he is. But if you're going to give him center eligibility, then to me, he goes right behind Matthews in that sense. He can score goals. He can rack up points. His shot volume is decent. The same thing with Jack Eichel. I know we've agreed that Brady Kachuk is an A tier. I don't. Brady Kachuk is one of those overrated players you take way too early because he throws his weight around and he throws punches.
But in a banger league, he gets you high numbers. It's not like he's getting you like right. 90. He gets you like 200 hits.
You're absolutely
that's
right.
Significant.
Yes. The problem is if he's a 12, if you're in a 12-team league, he's your first pick. That's who you're taking probably later. And then on the turn, you're probably going to get, right? You're going to try to maximize that value. Now, he had one down season last year. It was a struggle for him, complete struggle. And if you're looking for a bounce back candidate, he's probably it. But I have a hard time building my team around him with the inconsistencies that the Ottawa Senators showed. And if you believe that they'll be a better team and that will benefit Brady, then fine. I get he throws like 300 and some odd hits. And I get that he racks up 100 plus penalty minutes every year. And that is fine. The problem is if his highest total was 83 points, right? That was in 2022, 2023. It's not terrible. It's a point per game pace. That's fine. It's fine. Is it first round total? Probably not. But the hits and the PIMs make up for it. That's the bonus. That's the add-on. So again, 55 points last year. We can just throw it out and say, hey, man, it didn't work. We don't know how healthy he was, all that jazz. But 83, 74, 55. He did not score 30 last year. He scored 29. I know it is what it is. The problem is if I'm building my team around him, my picks after that have to be very offensively focused because I've sacrificed to collect hits and penalty minutes when I can get that from a cheap defenseman later in a banger league. If you're in a head-to-head categories league or a head-to-head points, I mean, Brady's not a first round conversation at all.
Correct. And good on you to specify the types of leagues where that matters. And yes, we're going to assume that you're in a league with face-offs here, but when you're talking like the top 20 or so centers, the face-off doesn't really change the ranking all that much. Once you get past this group, sure, a guy that, wins 700 draws a season might, if you're in a face-off league, absolutely may bump them up the rankings a little bit. But you're talking about the top 25 guys here. That's, that's not changing things too much here. So we're okay with these guys. I'm going to throw Braden Point in here. Now, this to me is where it can get dicey and we could get a lot of hate mail here, which if you want, you could send it to totalhockeynow@gmail.com. Always love the response there. Crosby. Again, let me just put this on the bottom. We are tier ranking from a fantasy perspective, not actual hockey ability. I recognize this guy is one of the best hockey players to ever lace him up. He's one of the best at his position. If he stays in Pittsburgh and doesn't actually say, you know what, I want to go win one more time somewhere else, he will be as big an icon in that city as Terry Bradshaw, Ben Roethlisberger, Mario Lemieux, on and on, Roberto Clemente. From a fantasy perspective, with the Penguins being a team that is not expected to do well, and there's, Malkin's another year older. Yeah, I know there's Brian Rust there. Is Crosby still considered an A-tier center, or are we having him start the B category? That is the question.
He's probably going to start the B for me. Like, I can't justify putting him in that category with those players, looking at the team that's around him. And, like, listen, Father Time is undefeated no matter what. And even when Alex Ovechkin did what he did, the supporting cast around him was still very good. And Crosby cannot do it all on his own. He just can't. So it's really hard. He starts off the B category. It's perfectly fine in my mind. He's going to get goals, get assists. His shot volume will be decent as well. He's just a B category because he's limited by the guys around him. Right? And there's only so much he can do.
And we're not saying necessarily step back. He had 33 and 58 last year, but if you're expecting more than that this year, that's where I like what you got last year. That's the high watermark. It's not going to get better this year, not unless Pittsburgh makes some sort of trade where he gets, again, not an indication on his on the ice talents. This is from a fantasy perspective. And when you look at what the Penguins have to skate with, like we said, Malk, right now, Ricard Raquel and Brian Rust, a line he skated with for all that's fine. But again, 33 and 58 last year. There's not going to be an increase. I don't know why you would expect one.
No, you're 100% correct. I think he leads off the B category, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think the next guy who goes behind them, though, is Sam Reinhart.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sam Reinhart just been going like towards the end of a second round, usually in a 12-teamer. little bit earlier in a 10-teamer. He's a guy that, like, if he's there, like, I'm never disappointed to get him. He has the right wing eligibility too, which that certainly helps. I'm not going to really play a guy like that at center unless I just happen to have a ton of wings, and then fine, I'll slide him there. But he's a guy I'm absolutely playing at right wing. He'll show up in our tier rankings for when we do right wingers. Yeah, he's on the top line for Florida, power play stud, gets shots. The no-brainer to put him there. Jack Hughes also, even with the health concerns, very much belongs in the same group as Crosby, Reinert, and Jack, with those two guys from a fantasy perspective. Got to throw that out there. So we still got a lot of bodies here. So I think this is going to be a pretty deep B tier here. Let me know when you want me to stop, because I think Suzuki belongs in there. I know Chris is not going to argue with me. Mark Scheifele, the way he bounced back last year, he's going to be the top dog there. There's no reason for me to think he's going to take a step back this year. So far we're doing okay here with the B group there. So what do we got here? We got 13 guys in, 12 to go. So next up here is, you got the Tage Thompson, Robert Thomas, Sasha Barkov, and Macklin Celebrini group here. So again, tier ranking amongst the top 25, not of the entire position. So some people have to be in the C and the D tier here. Are we let's start with, is there anybody here that you're like, yeah, they're definitely a B tier guy?
I would put Celebrini in that B tier. I know
right.
it is, it's his second year, but like if the upside is the upside is there, and we see the talent, we know it's there, and the Sharks are still going to be bad. Let's not get it twisted. They're still not a good team. So they're going to be trailing a lot, and they're going to need to play catch up. I would probably put him ahead of Scheifele. And I mean, because I just think the ceiling can keep going for this kid. It can keep going up. It can keep pushing it. I don't think it's out of pocket to think he can produce a point per game. The only thing that's going to slow him down is the rest of his teammates, right? Nick Suzuki obviously is fine. He had 89 points last year, okay? He has been on a steady trajectory up. There is no reason, barring injury, to not think he can better those numbers. I don't think he's a 100-point player, but he is a 90-point player in the NHL, and he's only adding more pieces. So the next person who tells me Nick Suzuki is not a top 10 centerman, I mean, you just have to write a 10-page essay.
For the purposes of these rankings, he would be top 12, I guess.
Okay, but that's because we've agreed that Brady is there and
Correct.
Nylander.
By Yahoo eligibility, yes.
By Yahoo eligibility, they are winger. That you would probably start. Well, Brady is again
at left wing.
I've said my piece. And Nylander, you would probably start him at wing. You would not slot him in as a centerman. You have the opportunity. It's good during the year because you can move him. But in reality, he's a winger, and we all know that. I guess the other player that I'm kind of like, I guess it would finish off the round, and it would be Tage Thompson. Now, obviously, I'm very high on Tage. And again, another player who's got dual position eligibility. He is a great candidate for a 40-40 season, right? 40 goals, 40 assists. I mean, people keep telling me the Buffalo Sabres at one point are going to be good. Probably not this year, but somebody's got to do damage there. Big frame, big shots, throws a little bit of his weight around. Like he is the straw that stirs the drink for that team. He is the one who's going to go out there and cause things to happen. So I like the roster flexibility. I like the goal scoring upside that he has. He can still pick up his assists because, there are some guys who can finish for him. There's a lot of positives there. I just don't think he can give you much more than that. I think he finishes off because he tops up that category.
I'm not going to argue against that because Tage Thompson is a guy I'm absolutely. I've tried to get him in as many drafts as I can because he had 47 back in 2023. Then 29 goals, but he only played 71 games that in 23-24. Back to 44 goals last year. So for him to be a 40-40 guy, he just needs to get 12 more assists. Totally in the realm of possibility. Yeah, Buffalo's going to be a bad team, but they should be a better team. So maybe a little bit more scoring there. And yeah, he's a right wing guy that, you're probably going to play him on the right side. But yeah, for me, he belongs there in the B tier. I guess for me next, and stop me at any point, or stop us at any point if you disagree. Robert Thomas is to me where it gets tough. And yes, like at the surface, I would be like, okay, let me put him in the C tier. But if you're in a categories league, Robert Thomas gets you a ton of assists, and he's a guy that can swing that category for you on any given week. I mean, last year he had what? 81. Last year he had 60 assists. The year before that, 60. So 47, 57. The guy gets a ton of assists. Maybe because the center tier is so deep, he would go as a C tier. The lead off the C tier. I mean, Barkov to me is one of a classic example of a tremendous player on the ice. Fantasy wise, maybe loses a little bit of that, we'll say pedigree, but again, not a knock on him. So are we okay starting the C tier with Thomas, or are we sneaking him in back in the B tier?
I would start the B tier. The C tier with Nico Hischier.
Okay. And he's been going late in drafts, and maybe that'll change, once you get closer to the season, but yeah, I don't understand. Like, he's been going down around maybe like in that 7th, 8th. Like, he's a guy that's like just been sitting at the top of a board in the queue, and it's like nobody's taking this guy. Maybe Ant could offer some insight. But so you want to end the B tier with him or start the C tier with him?
I would start the C with him.
Okay.
I think it helps that he had a career high in goals last season with the 35 goals. So I think that helps his case. Obviously, health. He's got to stay healthy. Had 29 power play points, had 187 shots on goal, stays with 44 hits as he had the previous year. So I'm good with him being in that tier. If this was last season too with Barkov, probably would have been in the B tier for me. But I agree, he could put him in the C tier as well with Robert Thomas in there.
All right, so we'll go Hischier, Thomas, Barkov, off to a good start. Now, talked about bounce back candidates, Macklin, Celebrini in year 2, and I got no problem with that. And the Sharks, again, just like the Sabres, they should be better than last year. I understand not much better, but it should be a better on the ice product, maybe an increased reduction for Celebrini. It was not a good sophomore season for Connor Bedard, who also now has right wing eligibility in Yahoo, so that increases his value a ton to me. But we're talking B and C tier defensemen here. We've got Celebrini in the B tier. We're not going to, are we going to give Bedard a pass and kind of sneak him in there too? Or does he belong in the C tier based on the fact that Chicago still hasn't really given him a whole lot of help around him?
I would leave him in the C tier. I need to see a little bit more. There are too many good players ahead of him that are, I don't want to say sure bets, but the risk that there's not as much risk. Like, he could explode. 100% he could explode. But it's not there yet. It's not there yet. And again, there are certain things that we need to see from him. The shot volume's got to be higher because this is a kid who could fire the puck. The goals are not coming yet. And yes, the gang in Chicago is young and they're going to get there at some point and everybody's going to pick up pace at the same time, but he's not there just yet. So if I in that C tier, there are a lot of players with a ton of upside, and maybe Bedard has the most, but of all those players, Bedard could be the one who flatlines the most. And it could just be growing. It could just be growing pains because he plays in Chicago because the team's so bad.
And maybe he breaks out this year and you just got a value pick.
Yeah.
You just got a value pick late around in the rounds. I think in the draft that I watched that you guys did last week, I think he went, it was either the 5th round, 6th or 7th round. So, whoever's getting him, you got a lot of upside and you might come away with it or you might not. This might not be the year because of the way Chicago plays. So, just keep your eye on where he goes in the draft or, where you're seeing him fall. And maybe that's where you take him.
So I've been seeing him in drafts go in the 4th round. Basically, if Tage Thompson goes, Connor Bedard's going to go like within a couple of picks. So and that's a trend I've noticed is those two guys tend to go right near one another, usually definitely in the same round, usually within about 3 or so picks. All right. So we've got a good looking group here. Next up on the list, let's talk about Sebastian Aho, because I could still put him in the C tier amongst this group. You're going to have Nikolai Ehlers in the building this year, so that's going to help. He's going to be skating on the line with him and Svechnikov, so I got no problem putting him in the C tier and letting him firmly be entrenched there. Maybe even ahead of Barkov because he's got Ehlers as a running mate now, but no, all right, I'll put him after Barkov because I still like the top six that he's involved with Florida. So I'm going to plug him there. Chris looks like he's got something to say about Aho.
No, perfectly where he needs to be. I guess a lot of people are afraid that the way the Carolina Hurricanes play and how they're more defensively structured might limit his upside. 74 points last year. He had 89 the year before. Like it's going to be, he's probably a 70 to 85 point player, which is still a pretty big range, but in a C tier, that's pretty good. He's good value, but if you're looking for him to get closer to 90, I don't know if he's there. And that's just because there's so many other things he's got to do. He's got to play the best competition every night. And sometimes he's not playing with like elite top goal scoring talent around him. There are good players around him, but I don't think he's playing with the elite talent that are, and I don't think Brendan Moore's system is going to let them go out there and really push the pace. This is a well-structured team, well-positioned. Aho goes out there, does a whole bunch of things that he needs to do. So again, probably like Barkov, another real good real life player. Like I would want him to center my top line, and I'd match him up against the opposing team's best line and not have to, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. But
from a fantasy perspective,
there are just other guys. He also doesn't have any other position eligibility. So it's like, okay.
And, to me, like that factors in here too. Like, obviously it doesn't matter with a guy like McDavid or McKinnon or Matthews or Eichel or Point or Crosby. But then after that, like, it helps that a guy like Jack Eichel can play the left wing, Kachuk can play the left wing, Reiner at the right side, Thompson on the right side. So that also to me gets them in that tier a little bit too, because you do have that flexibility. So we're about 5 deep here in the C tier. We're almost getting ready for a mock draft here, but not quite yet. I want to look, is there anybody down here that, like, to me, like Rupe Hintz, I think among this group, we could safely put in the D tier. Any argument there? Again, better real life than fantasy. Still a very good, I'd say as a center 2 on your fantasy team, very good. But if he's your center 1, I don't know if I want that.
No, he's a perfect candidate for the D tier.
For the Rangers, is that JT Miller?
That is certainly so. Remaining on the board here is JT Miller, Dylan Larkin, Tim Stutzel, and John Tavares are the last 4 we have here among the top 25.
Last year, I took JT Miller in the first round. I think it was in between 10 or 12 in our draft, in our real draft. And he did not obviously have the season he had the year before that earned him that spot. But, obviously I think he was dealing with personal issues. So he took some time off. Then he got traded to the Rangers. So it's tough coming into this, knowing the type of player that he is. He's now on a Ranger team. Maybe you can express more of how you're feeling with the Rangers right now and how he'll fit in. But I feel like he's either got to be in the end of B or somewhere in C. I wouldn't have him in D right now because none of this production that he lacked was due to him being injured or anything. It was that time that he took away and then being traded.
Now he's still going because also another guy that has wing eligibility. He's been going, somewhere in that late second round is probably about an accurate projection for him. It's right now scheduled or slated, I should say, to center the Rangers second line with Will Cooley and Mika Zibanejad. And I think the answer to the Miller question is he's going to be playing. Zibanejad looked good on the right side last year. If that's where his full-time role is going to be, and I like that, rather than trying to have Zibanejad be the third line center. Miller and Zibanejad can find that chemistry, and Cooley kind of just goes and does everything else out there. I think that could be, just that, and the fact that JT Miller is coming into a season with a fresh perspective, the place he's played before, players he's known for a very long time. He doesn't have the bullshit in Vancouver that's hanging over his head this year with Elias Pettersson and who's the problem in the lock. All that stuff is behind him. So he's coming in with a clean slate, and I think that helps too. So while I'll agree that I don't think he belongs in the D tier, I don't know if I can make an argument for him to be among the people in the B tier. I'd have to put him somewhere in the C tier.
I can live with him being in the C tier. A couple of reasons. One, he throws his weight around. He is a player who can rack it. He's a cheap version of Ovechkin who plays right. Ovi can throw his weight around. Miller can do that. He was close to averaging a point per game, right? And he did average it when he got to the Rangers. We can agree that the Rangers are a much better team than the Vancouver Canucks. And he never has to see Elias Pettersson ever again, or at least not in his locker room. So there's some positive there. I would like to see him center the top line. I'd like to see him play with Panarin, Lafreniere, mainly because I want to draft Lafreniere in a ton of drafts, and that would only boost his value because Panarin is a great passer. JT Miller can do a lot of great things as well. But for me, JT Miller can be all over this map. Easily can end up by the end of the year in any of these categories because like we know what he can do. Is he a 100+ point player? I don't know. I don't think he is, but like he's done it. And like the Rangers now, like he's on that top power play unit. He's going to be like, they're going to facilitate the puck around him as well. He's not afraid to go to the dirty areas of the ice. The Rangers don't have a 3C and a 4C. So it's Trocheck and Miller, and then the two other guys that are just going to play a little bit. So from a positional standpoint, they don't have to worry about it. They don't have to like fight over it. There's a ton of ice time for those two to play. Miller can also play those important minutes, but you're hoping Trocheck has to play them. You want Trocheck to play the tough matchups. I would leave him in the C, but all I'm saying is he can be anywhere on this map.
I'm not breaking Trocheck and Panarin up right now. I mean, I get why you would want to see that because I think that would work too, but I think that's a move you make if Trocheck and Panarin somehow go cold at some point in the year and you got to do a little bit of a shakeup. Otherwise, I'm leaving that alone. But yeah, like you said, Miller, like I said, just because he's coming into the Rangers environment, I think is just going to do wonders for him. And then for everything you said, yeah, I think he's a C tier guy. Now we got 3 more players to rank, but we do got to get over to our mock draft here. We at least got to make sure we get in the room. So what we're going to do is, let's see, we got one that's starting in 3 minutes here. So I'm going to put the link in the screen in a second. This one's already getting a little full here. So I'm going to put it in the main chat, guys. Pay attention. Be ready to go. Mock draft sign up time. Make sure everybody gets in the room. I'm picking 4th there. Still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spots to go.
Says you're picking 3rd.
Oh, I'm picking 3rd. Excuse me. I thought I was picking 4th. Ant's taking 4th, and Chris has got 8th. All right, perfect. So Ant's going to be, I'm sure Ant will snipe me a couple points. Chris kind of stays away from us. Now, we still got a few minutes before that gets going. So let's wrap up the tiers here as we move things along. So still remaining here is Dylan Larkin, John Tavares, and Tim Stützle. So I think we can safely put Stützle down there, the D tier. Again, shout out to Sherry, who we put Sanderson down in the D tier last year. We're not anti-Senators. Just it's how it's worked out. To Larkin, I would maybe put at the end of the C tier. Is that reasonable? I think that's okay. Or starting the D tier because Detroit, the production.
He can start the D tier. He's not a C tier. Not in my mind. He can start the D tier just because like Rupe Hintz is hurt. And you say you're not a Sens hater. I can't agree with that. I mean, the Senators are just not a great team. I don't know who needs to hear it twice, but I'll
shout out Sherry if you're watching.
And every other Sens fan who's delusional at this point of the year. I would probably, and then Tavares to finish it off. I think he's just there. He's just running out the clock now.
So you're putting him in the D tier as well.
Whatever you get from him, good. But I think he's probably a 60-point player at this point. I can see him losing his position as a 2C and ending up as a 3C as the season goes on.
Wow, that's quite the prediction here. Chris is no stranger into riling up Leafs Nation, and there it is. So we'll review that. We'll run through the tiers quick, and then we'll transition over to the 12-team head-to-head banger league mock draft here, mock draft 8 on Total Hockey Now, as that's coming up in about 3 minutes. Our S tier centers, and again, from a fantasy perspective, and only among the top 25, not among the entire position. McDavid, Draisaitl, McKinnon's your S tier. And your A tier is Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, Brady Kachuk, William Nylander, Braden Point. Then in your B tier, leads off with Sidney Crosby, which I cannot stress again from a fantasy perspective. Then Sam Reiner, Jack Hughes, Nick Suzuki, Macklin Celebrini, Mark Scheifele, Tage Thompson rounds out the B tier. Nico Hischier leads off your C tier with Robert Thomas, Connor Bedard, Alexander Barkov, Sebastian Aho, and JT Miller. And rounding out the D tier, Dylan Larkin, John Tavares, Rupe Hintz, and Tim Stützle. So there you go. There's our tier rankings for the top 25 at the centers.